Okay,
Oh, we can't
I
hear
am in the west. I am in the West Kootenays.
Can't hear her.
Do you guys know where Nelson is? In the West Kootenays Trail,
We
Nelson.
can't hear you, Ursula. If you can hear me.
You can't hear me? Can you,
Can
can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you coming out of the computer, but nothing through the speakers. Just a sec.
Okay,
Okay, now we hear you. Yeah.
can you hear me now?
It's not working.
Yeah. Now we can hear you. I
All
was,
right.
I was just wondering, what area of interior BC are you from?
What area of what?
You're in interior BC, are you not? Is
Oh,
that
yes,
what-
yeah.
And
We're-
where,
I'm in the West Kootenays. I live on Slocan Lake, just south of New Denver in the country. My physical address is in Silverton. If you guys are familiar at all with Nelson, Castlegar Trail, that's our general area. We're north of all of that. Yeah, so it's a mountainous area, very rural, but with a lot of culture. It's a very beautiful area.
and you weren't affected by any of this craziness that was going on?
No, we weren't. We did have a lot of rain and pretty strong winds, and our creek, we get water out of a local creek, got kind of muddy.
Yeah.
And, but no, we didn't get affected, not like in Vancouver or in the Frasers and Merritt and all of those places. They got wiped out. And they're getting a bunch more rain. My
Yeah.
daughter lives in Vancouver, and she said it was really quite spectacular, quite wild, the rain and stuff.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to your presentation, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. I have my presentation on a Keynote PowerPoint type thing, and I have a little video with it there, so hopefully that will work for you. So let me share my screen. If I can do this, share my screen. And now, just a minute. Okay, can you guys see this here at all and hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so my presentation is about abstract art photography. And my name is Ursula Abresch, and I just told you guys where I live. I was born in Argentina, and Spanish is my first language, although the first language I learned to speak was actually German and then Spanish. And I came to the north here going on 45 years ago, and I came to university in the United States and met my husband. We married, and eventually we immigrated to Canada. And now we are fully Canadian for almost 20 years now. So we're pretty happy with that. I'm very glad to be here with you guys. And I am going to be talking, like I said, about abstract and art and photography, three different things in a way, or abstract photography and art photography. I'm going to talk about what it is in my view with examples of my own photos. Then I'm going to talk about how I make them or how people can make that kind of photo. And then finally, some concluding thoughts, what makes a good abstract photo and why I make them and so on. The video feed to the right-hand side of my screen is a first for me. I haven't done that before, so I hope it works well. And the other thing I want to mention is that my internet connection, because we are rural, tends to be shaky sometimes. I don't think it should be a problem tonight because the weather is okay. But if I, for some strange reason, just totally cut out, I'll try to get back on again as soon as possible. It's because my internet is not too terribly good. All the photos I'm going to be showing are my own, and I put the names or the titles of the photos underneath or to the side of them. And the reason for that is that if you have any questions about them, you can refer back to them by name, and that way I can go back to it easier than if you describe it, the photo of the pink thing sitting on a blob type stuff, you know. As far as the presentation goes, the way I've been doing it is that I have a presentation for about 45 minutes, and then we take a short break. And after that, there is a period where if there are any questions, we have a question and answer period, and you can ask questions or make comments or whatever you want to do. Some groups have a way that you can type in the questions beforehand, like in a chat or something. And if you want to do that, I guess that will work also. But I think it'd be better to leave the questions for after the presentation, not during the presentation. So let's get going. What kind of images do I make? That's my first thing. So I make a variety of images. Many of the images I make are personal images, images of my family or vacations and so on. And then there is what I call my professional stuff. Many of the professional images are abstract photography, or at least images that fit my idea of what abstract photography is all about. I have an agent in California in a group out of California, and she insists that I call my professional work fine art photography, which I always find somewhat embarrassing because it's kind of like, it sounds so pretentious in a way. But on the other hand, she's got a point, because art photography is my way of, I use my camera as my pencil, my brush. Photography is my medium for creative expression. And because of that, I can use whatever method works to make the picture I have in mind to make. There are no restrictions, except the restrictions I impose upon myself on my own work, which there are a few of them. This is the definition that I use for my own work. My abstract photography is images that do not have an immediate recognizable association to visible concrete reality, or images that originate from reality but are their own reality. So those are two different things, but they're actually very similar. Images that are not recognizable right away, and images that are creating a new reality. For the first part, images that do not have an immediate recognizable association to visible concrete reality are images that show something that is very real, very concrete, sometimes very everyday, but maybe just a part of the whole, or it is shown out of context, so that the first reaction quite often is, I know this, but what is it? So some examples of that are this image here. It's called Reflection, and it is a glass vase that I put on a piece of very shiny black metal that I have, and I put it at a 90-degree angle to my computer screen, my Mac, and I have a picture on the computer. And that picture, the colors of that picture shine through the glass, and then the reflection, the piece of metal, the black metal, is very reflective, so it creates this whole reflection there. It's a neat, you have to use a pretty shallow depth of field to pull this off, because if you make anything beyond like f4 or something like that, then you will get part of the screen in focus too, and that would not work. Then the colors, you would see the screen patterns and you would see definition in the colors that you don't want. So I use my lens fully open for any kind of image like this. And I'm very careful to focus on one thing that I want to be exactly sharp, which in this case is the edge of the vase there, the edge of the glass there. Another example is this one. This is a close-up of a section of the EMP, the Experience Music Project in Seattle, which is one of Frank Gehry's buildings. I really like that building, and I haven't been able to go to Seattle for a while, but when I go there, I try to always go there and make some pictures of it. And this would be an example of things that are shown slightly out of context. You know, a lot of people will know what it is, but it's still like, well, what is it? Is it a building? Is it a machine? You know, that sort of stuff. So that's another way you can make abstract photos. And finally, there's Petal here, which is an extreme close-up of a glass of wine, a wine glass that had a little red pattern in it. And the black things are the bubbles in the glass. The blues and the greens are the backdrop, which I think was the sky. The glass was in a window. So that is, it's not recognizable at all, but it makes a beautiful pattern, and the colors are pretty pleasant, I think. Finally, Joy, the last one in this series of examples, is an extreme close-up of one of those little plastic whirligig type things that people can buy at the dollar store, and they have different shapes, and they have a thing so you can, a string attached to them, and you can hang them in the garden. And they kind of spin in the wind, and they just look really beautiful. They have lots of colors, but this is an extreme close-up again at the fully open lens to kind of distort the colors in the back. That was done inside my room on a piece of paper, black paper, with sunshine for light. So the second part of this definition here is images that originate from reality, but they are their own reality. So those are images that create new realities, new worlds in a unique and individual way. In my case, it's my way that they're done. They are an expression of who I am, what I see, what I hear and feel, even what I taste at times. And sometimes are simply the appreciation of the beauty all around us. There's so much beauty all around us. So I'm going to go to some examples of this stuff here that I'm talking about in for starters, new realities. This is Evening Ferry Ride. It's an image that it's two images combined. The horizon line in the middle is an image I made from the ferry going over from Vancouver to Nanaimo. And the rest of it is all an image that I made in studio, one of my water shots. And I combined them, and I call it Evening Ferry Ride. And when you ride the ferry, it doesn't look like this. But in my mind, that's kind of like, I love riding ferries. I love riding on water and seeing the islands far away and stuff like that, the land far away. It's like the joy of crossing water on a ferry on a calm evening. And that's what I'm trying to get at with this. So it's creating a reality that you can relate to, but it's a new reality. The tower is a little bit more obscure. It's a close-up of a rock close to where I live. And I was taking a workshop online about creating figure pictures. Actually, it didn't have anything to do with abstract. It had people in it. And the woman who was doing it was using all of these overlays methods. She was using all of these blending modes in I can't remember which application she was using, but you know how you have darken and lighten and burn and multiply and all of those. She was using one called difference a lot. And I started using that, and that's how I got all those weird colors here. And it reminded me of one of those futuristic movies with towers and people having, I don't know, big conflicts and so on. So that's what this is all about. The third one is possibilities. The big colorful background and foreground is one picture, again done in studio. And I glued in a silhouette of my daughter walking on a beach. I made this one last year when I was thinking, you know, COVID has been so long. It's been depressing how long it's been, how there doesn't seem to be a new normal coming up anytime soon. And I was just thinking about all the possibilities that young people hopefully will have in the future. So anyway, that's what this is all about. And finally, Slocan Nights is just my own fanciful vision of Slocan Lake. I live right by the lake, and how it looks on a clear night, which we don't get all that often because we get a lot of gray skies around here. But it's a fanciful vision of what Slocan Lake is all about. Also memories, feelings, sensations, and impressions, sometimes music. I like to try to make pictures that will give back music. The next two pictures, they are this one here, and this one. They are the same tree, and they're made probably about 3 or 4 weeks apart on the same year. I have a neighbor here, and his name is Moonbow. That's not his real name, but that's how everybody knows him by. And he has this beautiful tree in front of his house. And this was in October, when it was just gorgeous gold leaves everywhere. And it's a multiple exposure, handheld. I think it is 9 exposures. And they're blended in what's called darken mode in my camera. And it just, to me, gives back the joy that you feel sometimes when you're out and about in fall, and there is all that gold and red and yellow and beautiful colors all around you. So that's what this is supposed to be. The second image is a couple weeks later, when we had started to get snow, and pretty much all the leaves were gone. There was just some dried leaves and stuff like that left on the tree. Again, it's a multiple exposure. This one is done in lighten mode rather than in darken mode. And it just looks to me the way that Moonbow's place and Moonbow's house look like Moonbow's tree. So that's what this is all about. Walk in Beauty is done very close to where I live. We have a little creek that I mentioned before, the one that got muddy. It's called Hasty Creek. And we get our water from there. And this is right before a culvert that goes under the highway that goes close to our house. And it is an ICM picture where I combined two different movements, one vertical and one horizontal. And I got this picture. I put the little girl, I drew in the little girl there. And I was thinking of, actually what I was remembering is the books by Tony Hillerman, where they talk so often about walking in beauty, and our landscape is so different than Tony Hillerman's landscape, but I thought how beautiful it is to walk in all the beauty all around us. Harmony is Slocan Lake in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. And we don't get sunsets very often here, but when we do, sometimes they can be just beautiful. And this was in early February of 2020. And my husband was playing basketball, and I just was walking around the town and making pictures. And again, this is an ICM picture, and a camera movement picture. And actually, I'm not sure how in the world it came out this way, but it did. It was a beautiful evening. Then there is Cadenza. This is another close-up of the EMP, the Experience Music Project in Seattle. And if you guys know what a cadenza is, it's like in a concerto, like a violin concerto. Oftentimes they have more than one, but sometimes in the third movement, the final movement, they will have a cadenza where the virtuoso, the violinist or the pianist, can show off their virtuosity by just ripping away at it. They can just play with all the color and all the fancifulness that they want within the general theme of the concerto. And this picture just made me think of all of the joy and the beauty of inventing all this stuff that you do in a cadenza. Duet, on the other hand, is a multiple exposure close-up of two vases, like the transparent one I have before that I had way at the beginning, but this one is one red one and one orange one on white paper. And it's a much more peaceful image than cadenza, but it reminded me so much of some of the duets or the duos that you hear And the one that in particular came to mind is by Arvo Pärt, who is I think, Estonian composer. And he wrote this piece that was set to a poem by Robbie Burns, My Heart is in the Highlands. And it is done with a female voice and an organ. The whole thing lasts about 8 minutes, and it's just this gorgeous duo between a duet or just play back and forth between the voice and the organ. And that's what this picture reminded me of. And so I called it that. And finally, the simple appreciation of beauty. Winter light on Idaho Peak. Idaho Peak is the mountain we have behind our place, and the mountain that we used to be able to drive up to the top, but the road has washed out for 2 years now, so we can't do it. So we have to walk about 15 kilometers now to get to the peak. This is in winter when there was snow all around, the same day that I made the picture of Slocan Lake in the evening. And it just reminded me again of how winter looks around here where I live. Fancy glass, there's nothing fancy about this picture or what it is. It just shows the beauty of glass reflecting colors through it. Tumble is a close-up of the creek that I live by, of Hasty Creek. It's a small creek, but it can get quite wild sometimes. And on sunny days, it has rocks of all sorts of different colors, reds and blacks and yellows and grays and even greens and sometimes even black. And the water reflects so much color from all around it. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we're back.
Sorry, I got mixed up here. Anyway, so this is Tumble. Two canoes is two canoes on a beach. And again, it's a multiple exposure ICM image. And my agent really likes this one, and so does my husband, so I threw it in here. I like it myself too. There is no particular big meaning to it, just two canoes on a beach. And the pond, there is another lake close to where we live called Summit Lake. And this was in the fall 2 years ago. They have a lot of grasses growing right next to the edge. And that's another ICM, multiple exposure ICM of a close-up of the lake in the evening, probably about 4 or 5 p.m. After that, the mountains get very dark, so you can't get much color anymore. So that's the end of what I define my pictures to be, whatever. Anyway, so the next section is how do I make my abstracts, or how do we go about making abstracts? The images are all done using a Nikon digital camera. I started out originally way back when using film camera. I switched to digital in the early 2000s, a little point and shoot, and then eventually I moved up to using DSLRs. Right now I'm using a Nikon Z7 Mark II. And the pictures are processed on the iPad and the computer. My workflow nowadays usually is I upload them to Lightroom on the iPad, I go through them and throw out everything that is junk and keep what has potential, and I work on them on the iPad using Lightroom and Snapseed and the native Photos app that comes with Lightroom. Sometimes I use Procreate if I want to paint some stuff in. And then if I want them to be printed, if I want them to get them ready for print, I finish them off on the Mac on my computer. I used to do all my work on the computer, but I really prefer working on the iPad now because I can sit anywhere doing it. I use whatever works to make the image I'm about to make one that is satisfying to me and hopefully also to the viewer. For example, this image is called Homage to the Pacific Northwest. And I really hope that nobody thinks this is cultural appropriation, but I was inspired by the Haida art and I am not at all native, but I was inspired by it. And it's two pictures, one close up of water and one of the mountains, the coastline by Vancouver. And I like it, and I think that it is satisfying to quite a few viewers too. How do I make the abstract images? Sometimes it's just straight pictures. This is a straight photo of those vases that I like to have around, again, against the backdrop of my computer screen. This is a very, very close up of a plant that a beautiful flower that grows wild in Yellowstone Park in Wyoming. And the inside of it has this long, long filaments that are just bright yellow. So that's what this is all about. And finally, ecstasy is a close-up of a CD that for some reason I stuck in water, in a bowl of water, and took outside and was wondering what would happen if I took images of, it was a very sunny day, so basically all the color comes from the sunshine, sun reflecting off the CD that was in the water. Why I stuck it in water, I can't remember, but that's what happened, and that's what I got. Besides just straight pictures, there are in-camera methods and tricks. You can call them tricks if you want to. For example, intentional camera movement, which seems to have become rather popular lately. There is a magazine that comes, it's a digital magazine that comes out of England. It's called ICM Mag, and they have just the most beautiful examples of this kind of work. Intentional camera movement can be all kinds of movements. So it can be vertical or horizontal, diagonal, curves, flips, combinations. You can combine it with other methods. You can use it in multiple exposures. It's a really versatile way of working. The only problem or issue that I find is that it is kind of addictive, and it is also it tends to be deceitful for me, because just because I move the camera around and I got this weird picture doesn't make it a good picture. So even though it is a very useful thing to have in your tool bag and a very good practice, in a way, very good method to practice, it's not going to just all of a sudden make fantastic pictures. You still will have to have all of the things in your picture that make a picture a good picture. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. But examples of camera movement, this one is vertical, and the intention was to capture the light shining through the trees in Nakas, which is a town close to where I live here. Gathering colors. It's actually pretty much the same trees, but it's 2 years later. This one I made in October of this year. The other one was 2 or maybe 3 years ago. This one was a milder day. It wasn't a bright sunshiny day like the other one. This one was more of a muted type day, and it's a much softer image than the other one, this one here, but it is the very same place, just different light. Coastal blue is almost minimal. I made this one in September on the ferry between Vancouver and the Sunshine Coast. My husband and I went to the Sunshine Coast for a couple of days, and it was one of those gorgeous fall days when the sky was just absolutely blue and there was sunshine everywhere. And the mountains far away looked like blue shadows all over the place. And this is just one ICM sideways with a little bit of flip. The server was done in a restaurant at night in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I just saw this girl walking by and shot her and moved the camera as I was doing it. And I just liked it, so I kept it. Fall Fantasy is a combination image. It's done in camera, and it's one very sharp shot, the first one, and then the second one, the same place, but with the camera moving at a diagonal over the picture. It took me quite a few tries to get what I wanted, but I was trying to combine the clear pictures of the leaves and the trees and the tree trunks and stuff like that with the movement, the color and the movement, the blurriness of it. What was important in this case was that the background, the sun was shining on the trees here, kind of through the trees, but there are some mountains on the other side of the scene, and they were dark, they were in the shadow, so they created a really beautiful dark backdrop for it. Snow on Cedars is done right outside my house. We have a lot of cedars where we live, and it's another combination image, another multiple exposure, where I combined an image, an ICM image, vertical image up and down for the trunks, and then the branches, I did a flip with the camera. Now, one thing you have to remember when you do those flips is that you got to go almost counterintuitive with them, because if you imagine your camera, I don't know if you can imagine this, but imagine a straight line across your line of vision, just a totally straight line. And if you move your camera up, the line will go down. If you move your camera down, the line will go up. The same thing sideways. If you move it to the left, the line goes, and you have an up and down line like a tree trunk, the line will go to the right. If you were to the right, it'll go to the left. So if you want the branches to move the way they move in real life, you have to move your camera the opposite way. I hope that makes sense. Blowing in the Wind is another combination image of a still shot and a moving shot. And again, it's shot against the Valhallas. So the Valhallas were in shadow, and the sun was shining on the leaves and on the trees. So there was a lot of red and gold and yellow there, whereas the shadow of the mountains is very blue. And poppy, finally, it's a simple image of a California poppy, my favorite flower since I was a little tiny girl. And I thought I would try ICM on it because I saw somebody do that, and I thought like, hey, I can do that. And I did it. And chorus line are my vases, my collection of vases. And this is a whole flip, a whole circle there. So it's one photo with an ICM done in kind of a total circle type thing. Another thing you can do is the kind of like the opposite of intentional camera movement, where the camera is still on a tripod or handheld. Usually if you want it perfectly still, you have to use a tripod handheld, just gonna get shake unless you have very fast shutter speed. But what's moving is the subject. So it is kind of like the opposite of it, of intentional camera movement. And it's probably my favorite way of making pictures, especially for studio work. I use a pan with water a lot, and I put things around it, papers and so on. I use a flash, and my camera is on the tripod, and I move the water with a little blower. And that's how I get a lot of my pictures. Sometimes I use paper. I can move the paper or I can move the camera. The result is actually very similar, but there is just a different way of doing it. And I like it. I like trying all the different ways. Now, this is an example. This looks like ICM, but it isn't ICM at all. The camera was on the tripod with the flash. This is water in a pan on my studio desk. Same with this one here. This is two of them. One I glued in sideways because I was trying to make the impression of being by a waterfall, a small waterfall. I couldn't get it. So what I did is draw out the waterfall the way I wanted it. And then I placed the pictures over it, and then I took out the drawing afterwards. So because without the drawing, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's something else I've been trying to do lately. If I can't figure out how to do something, I will make a drawing of it, and then I will try to get the picture to fit that drawing. And sometimes it works, and sometimes I can pull my hairs out and not get what I want to get, but that's the way it goes. Light on the water is, again, a picture of water in the pan. So where the water is moving, but the camera is still and the light is from my flash. I sometimes use the flash on board of the camera, and sometimes I use it as a slave. Sometimes I use 2 flashes as a slave, but usually 2 flashes is too much light, so I use 1. I also like the kind of directionality of just 1. Gold Scribbles is handheld, and this is an example of unintentional camera movement. What I was trying to get is the camera not to move, but I didn't have my tripod along. So I was trying to hold it very still, and I was trying to catch the light streaks on the water, which you have to have a long exposure for. So I was trying to hold the camera still, but I couldn't keep it still. And you can see that on the rock there, that the camera was actually moving in a different direction than the water. But I did get the stripes that I wanted to get. And I thought that the movement on the rock kind of added to the picture, so I kept it. This was a bunch of girls walking around in some place, and I thought they looked so beautiful walking like that. And the camera, I was trying again to hold the camera still and just go with the movement of the girls, but obviously I couldn't keep the camera totally still. It's a long exposure. I think this one is 2 seconds or something like that. It was done in a tunnel. They were going through a tunnel, so they were a silhouette more or less, and all the light was on the other side of the tunnel. Another thing you can do is multiple exposures. I've already kind of mentioned a bunch of multiple exposures. This is an in-camera multiple exposure. My camera has different blending modes, and you don't have to do it that way. You can do it also in post, but I personally like the randomness that you get when you do it in camera. When you do it in post, when I try to do something like this in post-processing, I get too perfectionistic and I try to line up everything just so. And what ends up happening is that picture looks stiff. It looks kind of stilted. And at least to my eyes, and I like the randomness and the kind of freshness and movement that you get from just handholding the camera and trying to hold it as still as possible. But between the shots, I think this one is 7 shots, the camera moves a little bit. And because it is in darken mode, it just keeps all of the dark colors and it keeps getting it darker and darker. The camera has 3 modes that I use. It has a 4th one that I just don't use because I don't like it. It's darken, lighten, and average. Averages your tones throughout the whole picture. Darken keeps with each consecutive picture, it keeps the darkest tone. So in theory, if you keep shooting, you should get a totally black picture. And lighten is the opposite of that. So with each consecutive one, it keeps the lighter one. So you get in theory a totally white picture at the end. Red Door is done in lighten mode, and this is in California right before COVID hit, and it was one of those California missions that they had in Monterey, California, and there was a red door, and these are the quarters for the friars or the priests that lived there, and a little tree at the bottom. Snow Dance is a multiple exposure that was done in average mode, and you can kind of, if you were in light mode, it'd be a much lighter. If we darken, all of the things that are light gray would be black. It's a little tree against a bunch of snow, and I can't remember how many pictures it is, probably 7 or 5 or 7, and I rotated it each time, trying to keep one part kind of as the rotating point, so the middle of the tree trunk. And cube is 3. It's a multiple exposure of 3 images, and it's a hotel in Revelstoke here called the Cube, and I did 1 vertical and 2 sideways ones, 2 following the lines of the windows. Other methods that you can use are intentional out of focus, shooting through objects, or you can, like this one here, I shot through the through the straws, and I've tried to get both the front and the back in focus. I think that neither one is actually, but I kind of like it the way it is. Leaving is one shot through my windowsill. I worked for a season in Wyoming at Yellowstone Park, I think 5 months. And this was the day before I left, and I was up on one of my favorite places in the park. And we got one of those sudden rainstorms that you get there in the park or in the mountains. And I was sitting in my car waiting out the storm, and then the sun just burst out and my windshield was totally wet still. And I made this picture here, and it's one of my personal favorites, both because it has such beautiful memories for me and because I like the way it looks. In the round is another way that you can make pictures. It used to be popular a little while back. I don't know if it still is, but basically you pick an object or like a tree, a subject like a tree, and you walk around it, like you take a picture, go 3 steps to the right, take a picture, go 3 steps to the right, and just go all the way around and make how many pictures that is. And you combine them in the camera, or you can combine them out of camera too. And sometimes you get some really interesting stuff. Quite often to me, you get just really boring stuff, but sometimes you can get some really beautiful stuff. I wanted to mention with the blending modes, I don't know if any of you have iPhones, and I don't know if other phones have the same app, but there is an app on my iPhone that is called Slow Shutter. And that one uses different blending modes to make the pictures. So you can actually emulate pretty much the same type of thing that you do with a fancy camera that has all sorts of blending modes just with your iPad. I've been doing that a lot lately because the iPhone takes such good pictures. Processing, other ways to make abstract photos, processing methods. You can do it in post-processing, like you can change the white balance or changing colors. And sometimes you start out with a fairly abstract picture to begin with, like this one here, but I changed the colors, and the change in colors make it just look very different than what it looks in real life. It's out of context. It is semi-abstract to begin with, and the color change makes it just very different, very graphic. Ghost Forest is another picture from Yellowstone, and it is, one could argue that it isn't abstract because you know exactly what it is. It's a forest, except that it was in the middle of summer, and I changed the colors all around, and it loosely fits within the definition of abstract if you kind of push it a little bit, I guess. I don't know. Tall trees is trees around close to where I live, and this is done in post-processing. What I did with this one is a thing that a guy that I know in California taught me, where he was shooting, what's it called, the wave or something in Arizona, those red rocks that have all of those shapes in them, and he wanted to do something different with them. So with it, so what he did, since the red rocks were red, and then all the bends in the rocks and stuff like that would be darker, almost black, you know. So he would intensify the contrast or intensify the curves so that you would get that black and red. And then he would switch the colors all the way to the opposite. So all the reds would turn the opposite of red, so it would be green, I guess. And then he would switch it again. How was it that he did it? Oh, I can't remember it right now. Anyway, you do these 2 things, and I'll have to look it up because right at the moment it's totally evading me. But what happens in the end is that all of you invert. First you invert, and then you switch the colors. And then when you invert, all your blacks turn white and all your other colors turn the opposite. But then when you switch the colors, the original blues and reds go back to blue and red, but what was black and turned white remains white. So everything that's white in here was originally black. The rest of the colors are the original colors. And I thought it was an interesting method, and I've been experimenting with it. Another way that make abstract photos is by combining different drawings or painting. This one is one shot of water in my pan with a gold background so that it reflects a lot of gold on the water in red. And I drew in the little boat there. And I tried to make it look realistic, the boat. It looks kind of fakey, but if you don't look at it too close, it looks like a boat in the evening on some evening that wouldn't happen in real life, not that colorful, but it's an evening to remember. Ravens is a combination of two of my photos again, some ravens on a flat roof, and I got their silhouette. And the backdrop, which was blue sky in the original, is replaced with one of my water shots. And then there is Infancy, which takes the title for the worst title ever. I could not come up with the title for this picture, and somebody said, oh, it looks like a kid's drawing. Why don't you call it Infancy? So I went with it, and now I go like, why in the world did I call it that? It's such a stupid name. But titling photos is an art in itself, and I find it very frustrating at times. This is a photo of some trees close to where I live in silhouette against the sky. The silhouette against the sky, and I drew in the backdrop. I just made a backdrop and drew it in and then stuck the other thing up in dark and against it. And since the sky was a very light blue, not much of it shows through, just all of the stuff that I drew on the other layer. In between day and night is in Yellowstone again, and it's Lake Yellowstone. And even though you know what it is, it also doesn't look what it is. And what I did here is draw in a lot of stuff with my Apple pencil. And it's experimental. I've been trying to figure out how I can combine drawing and photography. And this is one of my attempts. My agent really liked this picture, so I kept it. Intriguing is another multiple exposure, a silhouette of a tree with some papers that I have here at home. The tree is done with ICM. The papers were totally still. And my husband liked it, so I kept it. Finally, you can alter image with filters. And here we get to what I was saying way at the beginning, that there are no restrictions. And yet for myself, I tend to have qualms about filters quite often. I don't like using them. And I tell myself, if you can tell that it's a filter, don't use it. The problem is that if you use a filter, you can tell it's a filter. So sometimes I keep them anyway. I like to play with them anyway, but I don't particularly like filters in general. This is the web, and it's done on the Mac with a filter called Filter Forge, which is kind of a community type filter creation thing where people can create all these different filters and you can use theirs, or you can create your own filters and you can distort images in all sorts of ways. Dome is using one of those filters that I can't even remember the name of the app anymore, but they're kind of circular where they convert a flat scene into a globe type thing or into a circular scene. And this is a close-up of a building, and I ran it through that filter and got this image and kept it. And geometry is it's a close-up of a crack in a rock that looked like a tree, and I added a geometric overlay to it and kept it again. And finally, Carnival, it's some glass building in Calgary, close to where you guys are, I guess. And it's done with Filter Forge again. And it's one of those filters that explodes an image into shapes. And occasionally you can get something that will stick. So to me, abstract photography is envisioning and making pictures that you or I want to make, any which way you or I want to, what I wanted to say about that is that over time, I've been told quite often, yeah, but what you're doing is not photography. And I go like, well, you know, if that's your opinion, fine. But I don't think that doing experimental stuff, using all the tools that are available to you to get what you want to get is a corruption of photography. I think it is art photography. Photography, just like any medium, you know, painting, sculpture, music, doesn't need to be just one thing. You don't have to have always all your pictures totally sharp, always expect reality to be depicted. I mean, what is reality anyway? Just take any pictures of people selling their houses and there is a dump to one side and a factory to the other, but they just take the picture of the house and crop out everything else and they talk about how marvelous the house is. Is that reality? No, reality is the whole thing. The pictures do not show you the whole thing usually. So what, or any picture that you crop, you're cropping out stuff, you know. So I think that any art form can be these things that are the concepts that you work with originally, but they can be so much more. It can be a way for you to show how you think, how you feel, to reflect your experiences, your memories, and to create beauty just for the sake of beauty. So anyway, what makes a good abstract photo? I'll try to be, I think I'm running out of time. I'm sorry about that. What makes a good abstract photo? Same as any other picture: subject, composition, light, and story. Subject has to be of interest to you and to the viewer. If it's not interesting, people are going to ignore it. Resilience. It's a picture of the burned trees in Kootenay National Forest, and the burns, the trees that have burned, both in Kootenay Forest and many other places here, are something that I am very, very interested in. And when I showed this picture to my agent, she just loved it. And she made a huge print on metal and hung it up in her house. So it is of interest to viewers also, I think, at least to some viewers. So the picture has to be interesting to you. You have to love it yourself, but your viewers have to like it too. The composition. Your composition has to work for the particular picture, whether it follows the rules or not. The rules are there to be followed, but also to be broken, depending on what the picture is, whatever works for what you're trying to do. This one here, those are not stars. It was an evening coming down from the mountains, and it was in late September. Those are larches up on a ridge, high up on a ridge, and the sun was going down behind them and the sky was turning that beautiful blue that it turns in the mountains in the evening. And all the white stuff is fireweed. The fireweed were losing their seeds and they were just floating around in the sky. They made the whole thing look like it was a starry night. It was just such a gorgeous day. And that's what this is. But the reason I included it in this case is because the horizon line is way to the bottom. It's not at the thirds, as they always tell you to put your horizon line at the thirds. If I put this at the third, it would be a much less effective picture. So in this case, the composition does not follow the rules, but it works. This one here by the Blue Lake is one, again, that my agent really likes. It's not your classic composition, but as a composition, as an abstract composition, it works. So you have to think about the individual picture and what works for your individual picture. Light. Yesterday, I was looking through you guys' website, and there was the gallery of a gallery of various people's works. And one of the people in the gallery said that he had had this kind of moment of aha type stuff when he realized that he wasn't photographing light, but he was photographing reflected light. I think that's how he put it. And I thought, like, wow, that's an interesting concept. I got to think more about that. To me, light has always been color, you know, because without light, you wouldn't have color. Color is light, light is color. But there are different kinds of light. There is natural light, there's artificial light, and there is what I call created light. Whichever light you use in your picture, whether it's reflected, whether it's color, whatever it is, it has to be excellent. To me, that is just absolutely necessary. If your light is not excellent, your picture is not going to work all that well. This is carefree. This is natural light, handheld against the sun in the mountains. Those are seedlings from the Western salsify, and they are highly reflective seedlings, and they create all kinds of little microprisms. And so you get the blue from the sky, but you get all of the other colors that are the reflections on the little pieces of the seedlings. Blue Lagoon is artificial light. This is done in my studio, one photo, and it is, the water is moving, the camera is on the tripod, and the light is one flash mounted on the camera. So this is artificial light. And finally, created light. This one I did a couple of weeks back by a place called Bannock Point on Slocan Lake, where I live. And it was done in the middle of the day when the sun was shining really brightly, and all the stripes in the water are sunshine. This is ICM on a curve. I wanted to make it look like it was an evening or night shot. So I darkened it a lot, and I added in that kind of moon thing at the top that looks like a moon shining. It does, I'm not sure that it quite works, but that's what I was going for. So this is what created light would be in my view. It's light that you create in post-processing, either by adding some light, there's various ways to do it, or by dodge and burning and stuff like that. And finally, story. Story may be subtle or in your face. It can be a memory. It can be the emotional content of an image. Sometimes it can be the start of a new story. Story can be all kinds of things. And I wanted to say that for any good picture, you have to have at least one of these things be very strong. If you have more than one, if you have all four, it's great. If you have good subject, good story, great composition, and fantastic light, you have a good picture. But you can get away with just having one or two. For story, this is a close-up of some lettering on a tree that was full of graffiti. And it's a piece of a letter. It wasn't a girl holding up a phone to her ear, but I cut it out. I went very close with my macro and made this. So this would be creating a new story, or the start of a new story, which is something that you can do a lot with graffiti, because graffiti artists are very, very creative, and you can kind of tell their story over and create new ones with it. It's really interesting. A Beautiful Loneliness is a picture of water in my studio, together with a close-up that I made of some knitting needles that I had laying around. And it's supposed to give, this is one where the story is more like the impression. What I wanted to create is the impression of being by the ocean in the evening, all by yourself on a windy day, and how that is such a beautiful loneliness to be there all by yourself and enjoy the colors and the smells and the sounds and all of that stuff. So that's what I was trying to give back here with this picture. And finally, Come Walk With Me, which is not exactly an abstract, but I included it anyway as an example of kind of trying to create a new story, and also trying to give back a feeling, an emotion of walking around in the fall and telling someone, telling your husband, telling your partner, come walk with me into this beautiful golden evening. In conclusion, I'm almost done. I love abstracts in all its many different forms and manifestations, in painting, in sculpture. I just really like it. This is one of my own personal favorite pictures, and it's simply a representation of the buildings in Calgary at night. Tartan is another close-up of the little creek where I live done in ICM, reflections of the sky in the water. It's something I really love. I love color. I I really like color. I have been experimenting with black and white, and I really like that too, but I do love color. Palouse from Steptoe Butte. Palouse is an area that a lot of photographers go to because they have so many beautiful shapes in both spring and summer, and also towards the fall. And this is done with post-processing. The ICM was not as pronounced originally, and I kind of tried to make it more pronounced. Color, this is pure gold, and this is a multiple exposure against the setting sun by a little lake north of where I live. I use whatever method works. I've said that before. I make them in camera or whatever app works for the situation. This is done in camera. This is a multiple exposure against the lake. This is a combination of a ICM photo and some painting that I posted in. Actually, it isn't painting. That's a filter that I ran, a painting filter, and I combined it in parts with the image. And finally, this one, which is just totally a picture of colors that I had, yellows and whites and little bits of blues and blacks. And I ran it through one of those filters that I say I don't like, but I occasionally like anyway, and created this here. The goal for me is to make images that are satisfying to me in particular, and hopefully also to the viewer. But you have to be happy. You have to love your subject. That's the most important thing for me. French Beach sunset. This is when we were on the coast a couple months back on French Beach, and we had a glorious sunset. And this picture to me kind of gives back what it felt like to be there at that time. It was also very windy. Pastel Waters is Logan Lake where I live. Sometimes you get these very pastel waters there and the blue mountains behind it. And finally, fall tapestry. Fall is my favorite season. And this is some trees against the sky. And I cannot remember what I did with it, but it's called Fall Tapestry. And I hope it's the picture that I enjoy. And I think a lot of viewers also enjoy. That's the end. So I think that I don't know if you guys want to take an intermission now for a couple minutes. I need to kind of catch my breath. If you have any questions after the intermission, we can have a question and answer session for a while. I like that very much, and thank you for listening to me. So
Yeah, I don't know if this is the,
I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing the screen.
can people at home hear from this microphone?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you hear from this microphone? Or am I got the other mic?
I can kind of hear you, yeah. Oops, that's the wrong one. I think I lost my connection. No, I am connected, but I can't figure out how to, new share participants, pause share. Did that work?
No,
No? Okay. Huh. Okay. I have no idea. How to stop sharing my screen. Stop share. Okay, got it. I think I got it, right?
yes,
No?
that worked.
That worked? Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not very good with Zoom. I'm actually not very technical about a lot of this stuff. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Would you like to take a short break and catch our breath, go to the washroom, whatever, and we can have questions and answers if there are any questions? Would that be okay? Hello?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so couple minutes. Couple minutes. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
The website too says December the 8th, so we'll get that fixed. So it's December the 15th, not the 8th for the, the winter thing. For the Connie show. Bill is now going to get up and dance. Oh. Yes. So you can take it if you want right now. Okay, no, don't then. So, there, we got this one back. Both. Yeah. Because this I don't think will. And we're back. Okay, Judy.
Okay. Hi, Ursula. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, very well.
Okay, okay. So I have a question. It's Judy here.
Yeah.
Can you describe your setup that you do in the studio with your water? Like, is your camera overhead? Is it and how do you get such brilliant colors in that?
Yeah.
Can you do
Okay.
that? A little
I will
bit?
try. Okay,
Okay.
imagine a table, right? A table, like a kitchen table. But let me get something.
I don't know what to do. Yeah. Is there questions in the chat?
Okay, so imagine your table. This is the pan I use. It's a Pyrex pan.
Yeah.
Except that this one is from IKEA because the Pyrex pans have letters down here in the middle. So the IKEA ones have them on the side. So you get a nice clean glass there.
That's a
That's
great idea.
important. Otherwise you get all
It's
this.
very important. Yeah.
Yeah, actually I had a dentist friend of mine rub off the letters on on a Pyrex pan originally, except that then there was a bunch of scratches there, so that didn't work either.
Yeah.
So I looked around and looked around. I finally found this one at IKEA, something. And this is the little blower I use. It's one of the cleaners, rocket cleaners.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have these little like corks, almost like this kind of stuff. I have 4 of them,
Yeah.
And I put one in each corner, so there's a gap underneath that. So the pan is on the table on those little things here.
Mhm.
I can't show you because my table is full of other stuff right now. I fill the pan with water to almost to the top.
Mhm.
And then and it's kind of close to the edge. So, okay, how can I describe this? Pretend that this is the table. Can you
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah.
This is the pan of water.
Yes.
The tripod would be over here.
Right.
Can you see that? Oh,
Oh, now you lost your mouse. Oh, dear. I'm sorry.
sorry about that. Let me use the iPad, that's firmer. There we go.
Okay.
So this is the table, and there's my tripod. The camera is on the tripod, kind of a little bit higher than the pan of water. pointing
Okay.
this way. And I
Yep.
use macro lens, and I get it as close as I can, or fairly as close as I can, and I put it on 2.8, f2.8. My camera. That's the
Okay,
Anyway.
we're following you. It's okay.
Yeah. And I use a flash either on the camera or to the side as a slave.
Yeah.
I've tried all other ways of using light, but the flash works the best for me. Then what I have is these things that kids use to make their reports in school. You know those.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I put it
Around.
behind, like the pan is over here and this is behind it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I put all kinds of papers or things, sometimes fabric.
Oh,
I have a whole bucket of papers here.
oh,
Chris,
so that's what
paper.
gives you the color. Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
All kinds of that sort of stuff.
All right, all right.
Goodness, so much stuff. And and then what I do is I put the camera on like a couple seconds delay, and I push the shutter, and then I start blowing on the water like this here to get it some movement.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I have to move my hand out of the way really quick right before it fires. Sometimes I get my hand stuck in there. And sometimes you get this black stripe, and that's the thing moving up and down here.
Right.
But you try to get some movement in the water, and you're using a very shallow depth of field, so you're going to get just a little bit of stuff sharp, and all
Okay.
the rest of it will be diffused color and stripes and
Okay.
movement, stuff like that.
Okay.
So
All
that's
right.
the method. Oh no, now I make weird reaches. Anyway, hold on.
Thank you. That's awesome. Does anybody else have a question here?
That was the only question.
No. Oh, so Carmen here is wanting to know about non-abstract, yes, you, I'm going to let her pose the question.
Okay.
My question is, the photos that are not really abstract, but they're not entirely realistic either. What would you call that style? If you don't call it abstract, what would you call it?
My agent calls it fine art photography,
Okay.
Oh,
and she loosely refers to them as abstract overall. And abstract can be quite a range, you know. So if you want to be a purist, it has to be totally abstract. But
Right.
Photos like, for example, like trees and so on, where you recognize that it is a tree, but it doesn't quite look like a tree. They're still loosely classified as abstract.
right.
I
Is there a
call
question
them.
on there, Mark?
I don't.
There's questions on the chat?
Not really, just
No,
comments.
Comments? Okay. We've got lots of comments on your excellent work, Ursula.
Okay.
No other questions?
No, no
No.
questions.
Okay, Mark.
So my question is the business part of what you do. How do you find, because it's obviously it's definitely art. How do you find when you go to sell a piece of art, what does it translate best to? You mentioned a metal print, but do you find that you sell more canvas, metal, or do you sell it
No.
digitally and
I don't
people do
sell.
their own?
I
You
have an
don't?
agent.
Oh,
No, I don't sell any pictures.
oh,
I have
well,
an agent that does all
maybe
my
maybe
stuff.
you should
I
start.
got a symbiotic relationship with this agent, Helen is her name. And basically she contacted me almost 10 years ago and told me, hey, you know, I really love to sell stuff. And I bet you don't like it. And says, you do what you like and I'll do what I like. So I make pictures and she sells them.
Okay.
So what translates best then? When she sells it,
She
do you
sells them
think-
whatever, I guess, you know, the way she tells me is whatever the customer wants for their particular situation. You know, she sells them both for on online outlets like Great Big Canvas and art.com and stuff like that. She sells them through galleries. Sometimes it's private commissions. And it all just depends on whatever the client wants. So if they have, like if a big office has a place in the hallway. There was one a couple of years back where they wanted to have 2 pictures and one in the middle and all 3 in acrylic. And at that time it was very hard to get acrylic, but she managed to get that one. And there was a hospital in Minnesota who wanted to put one of my pictures on a kind of like, they made a big walkway between 2 wings of the hospital and they wanted to line the whole walkway with one of my pictures kind of in sequence. And I forget how she did it, but they did some sort of canvas thing that got glued onto the wall and stuff, and it ended up looking really beautiful. But I don't really bother. For myself, I like metal prints a lot. It's just one of those things. I think metal prints have a beauty to them that, especially with the water photos, the ones in the pan, it kind of approximates the look that you get when you get the pictures on screen. You know the difference of when you see your picture on your computer screen and how it glows, and then you put it on paper and it looks like, huh? How did that get there? It's not quite the same. It doesn't have the transparent glow of color that gets on the screen. Metal has a way of approximating that, and I like that very much. So for me, metal is a very good medium, but I don't really do that much. I do have a printer, and occasionally I'll print my own pictures. And I found this paper. It's Epson, I think it is. It's, yeah, Epson. And it looks like water, that paper is just gorgeous. Okay, I can't find an example right now, but it's this paper that is very flexible and it's just beautiful. And you print something on it and it looks like a metal print, but it is paper, not metal. So I do like that a lot. I've also printed some of my own pictures on watercolor paper, and I affixed them to like a cradle board. And I like the look of that too. So it just really varies. You can take the same picture and do it in 5 different ways and you'll get 5 different versions of it. And I think that for myself, that is part of the beauty of it, is this starting new stuff. You know, somebody wants it on metal, somebody wants it on canvas, and you go like, okay, that's good. It's wonderful. You know, does that make sense at all?
Yeah, yeah.
So I wouldn't know what to do if I had to sell my own pictures. I probably go bankrupt with them.
Sandy was just asking what the name of that paper was called again, the one that you couldn't find.
Give me a moment. Give me a moment. I can find it.
Cool.
I'm dropping stuff again. It's this one here. Oops. Can you see it? It's Epson metallic photo paper, metallic glossy.
Excellent.
Yeah. Did you see that? Yeah.
Oh, one more from Judy.
So That's great, Ursula. You've given us lots of ideas. But I have another question. You say you're using your Apple Pen a lot. Do you draw?
I'm sorry,
You can you?
I
can
couldn't
you,
hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now? No.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can.
Okay. You're using your Apple Pen.
Yes, I
How-
love it.
So I've been wanting to maybe get one. So how does that work for drawing? Like you draw as well on your pictures, right? How do
My
you?
pictures, or I draw first and then I put the picture on it. I usually use
Oh,
for it.
you
There's
use
a
what?
Procreate. This app,
Procreate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
okay.
and you get like a blank sheet, like
Sure.
you make a blank sheet and you can draw or whatever,
Yeah. And then you add your picture on top of that. Okay.
Yeah, or
Okay.
I use it as a framework, and then I do it on one layer, the drawing, put the pictures or the
Right.
pictures on a different layer, and then eventually I will throw out the drawing because I don't want to keep it there.
Right.
Like in the case of the waterfall, that was the case. I couldn't quite envision how to put those pictures so that it would look like the waterfall I had in mind. So I drew out the waterfall and then placed the pictures on it and then got rid
Right.
of the
Okay.
drawing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's great. Great work. I love it. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
I've been trying very, very hard since that was my project last winter, and it's going to be this winter again, is to learn how to draw well on the iPad and also on paper. I go to a drawing session every Saturday, and
Oh,
we draw
nice.
either still lifes or live drawing, and
Yeah.
I like drawing very much. I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to do, and I think it helps with photography to do other art forms.
Yes. Yes.
I tried painting, but I'm too impatient for painting.
Yeah.
It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I like digital art. It's a neat thing to do. If you're bored, you can just sit there and doodle
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions? I think that's it. There's nothing in the chat. Nobody else here? No, we're good here. So thank you very much, Ursula. That was really good. And thanks for coming to our Zoom session tonight.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was a pleasure. I hope it inspired you. So
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How do I get out of here?
All right, so Bill is going to go through our images. And see if I can, there we go, the monthly assignment. Where'd it go? Right there. All right, Bill, are you ready?
Oh, goodness. Pardon me if I lose the mask. All right, then. Okay, if you could start that, Mark, please. Thank you very much. Uh-oh. Okay. Great picture of. Let's just do it like last time. We'll go slowly through, and if anybody has questions, raise your hand.
I love this one. This is my favorite one.
Yeah, good capture. Who did that one?
Sandy.
Anyway, picture. Yeah. No, it's a great great picture with obviously slower shutter speed with intentional camera movement. Oh, don't go so fast. Don't go so fast. Backspace. Left arrow. Okay, so Mark, you want to let your cat out of the bag with this one?
All right, so this one is my image. I kind of cheated. This is from my iPhone. My wife and I, a couple of months ago, went out to Banff. The weather was kind of miserable. There was no wildlife. Nothing was going right. And what I do with my iPhone is I'll use my iPhone and take a bunch of images from wherever I'm at just to see what the composition could be like with my camera. So instead of messing around different things with my camera, I'll do it on my iPhone. And so this was the Sunday morning before we're leaving. We'd gone to Tim Hortons for a tea, and I only have my cell phone with me. I didn't even take the camera out of the hotel room. And I was leaning against a building and took a picture of it. Then I went into the image and changed it to slow shutter. So I cheated.
It was an experiment that turned out well. Questions, comments? So inside of Kristen's computer was the answer. That's Kelly's, yeah. Yeah, that's nice capture. And for those that did not go, that was a great event. I'm really happy that we were invited.
I would have used the long lens. I had my long lens on the whole time, but it would have been 2.8. Yeah. Because I found I had to have that, and I probably used a flash. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Yeah, that little girl, she was fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of us had our apertures pretty much maxed out that day. The lighting wasn't super by any means.
And then I had to use a flash, and it didn't carry all the way back. You could only get some, like they had to be kind of close because of the lighting, but just if you didn't want to up your ISO a lot. That's the thing, yeah.
No, thanks, Judy.
They're just alyssum, little tiny flowers. And when I bought them, they were like this big. They grew into this carpet, like my whole flower bed, which is covered in them. So I was just looking for like a central part, and I would play around with it. And sometimes it's hard to get a smooth zoom in and out. You get the little squiggly lines. That one turned out really good. I liked it. So I was zooming out. Yeah.
So you started with the focus.
Yep. 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 So.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Mark. Oh, nice warm campfire. That looked pretty good right now with the scotch, to be honest. Yeah, and someone had made a comment on the form that it was intriguing that you actually used colors of the color wheel, which is appropriate.
Out of my trees, the deers were eating my trees, so I put all of these in, and so I focused on the middle, and I was doing trying to capture the background is what you're seeing in the colors. So I had read this YouTube thing, and so this is one of my attempts of it.
Did it work?
Yeah, I was quite surprised. I got quite a few. Didn't get a deer in the picture, mind you, but
Thank you. Sorry, who said that? Oh, Helen. Where was that, Helen? Where was that?
It was in Old Montreal in the fall. And yeah, I had others where you couldn't, like it was more blurred and you couldn't tell that there were the little carousels around it. But I liked that you could kind of see them. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think you got the shutter speed on that one. Yeah.
And I like
North Montreal. Yeah. Yeah, it's not Belmont Park. That's somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Okay, Mark. It's a drop, but I really can't tell of what. So who's? Yeah.
It's a drop of food coloring in a stainless steel bowl of milk.
Oh, thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Taken with an Olympus Tough point and shoot camera.
So how many tries did it take you to get it?
Well, I shot a whole bunch in a row. I think that this was one of the only ones where the droplet kind of was still reasonably sharp. But yeah.
Any reason why you used your Olympus Tough?
Well, I was trying out some feature on the phone, probably. I'm trying to remember. Unfortunately, the EXIF data doesn't capture necessarily which scene you were using. It just says that it was an in-camera thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No, okay. Thanks, Rob. Nice little waterfall. Sorry? Oh.
Yeah, took it this fall. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, nice capture. A silhouette in front of the Big Dipper. Do we have the photographer online? No. Okay. Oh, they ran away. I think this is Kim's, if I remember right. Kim, are you on? Well, she's not, but neat shot anyway. Nice fall scene. The water will be a little chunky right now, but whose shot is that? It was Brenda's? Oh, Montreblanc? Oh, nice. It's a good shot. This family scene. As one of the comments said, you know, young kids always in motion. This creative shot of the dancer's feet. Yeah, absolutely could be abstract. That was Hank? We couldn't hear him, but he said about a 15th of a second.
I think that was the biggest lens I had with me, which was only 135 mil. But I kept narrowing it down, and I thought, oh, I'll do a little artsy thing that my friend John from art school would like. So I put the leaves in the front there. Yeah. So.
No, that's great. I think the leaves add quite a bit to it. Add some depth and layering to the picture.
Without them, and I didn't like it as much. So, yeah.
No, good job. Okay, Mark. Is that it? Oh. Well done, everyone. Thank you for participating. Any other questions, comments?
I appreciate you saying what
often the distance was because I had no starting point. So now it's getting the brain working.
Oh, thank you for saying so. I was just going to reiterate, the next assignment is due in the first Sunday of January. And I can't remember if that's the 2nd or the 5th. It's anyway, the first Sunday. There's so many of them. Oh, that's right. That's right. This is on Saturday this year, so it'll be the 2nd. So yes, as was mentioned before, in the distance is the next subject. That's where the primary subject is, well, duh, in the distance. Sure what else we could say about that. Use your imagination. It doesn't have to be far distance. Distance is all relative. So it could be from where you're sitting to the edge of the room. That could be distant. Or to the horizon. That's also distant. So have at her. Okay. Thank you all. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, I guess that wraps up the meeting for tonight. So thanks everybody at home and thanks everybody here for coming. And December 15th, party time by yourself. Yeah. Okay, good night, everybody.